What is up, everybody? This is your guy Kalai, and welcome back to Budget Buys. And this is part 2 of 3 of my coverage of the new limited edition Bugha Gold gaming gear from Five Below. In this case, I have the limited edition Bugha Gold LED gaming mouse, which is meant to be either a replacement for or an alternative to the Bugha LED Gaming Mouse 2, which was itself meant to be a replacement for or alternative to the Bugha LED Gaming Mouse. And of course, the third product in this line went with one of the more annoying tropes in sequeldom, and that's sharing the exact same name with the first in the line. They could have at least called this the Bugha LED Gaming Mouse 3. Now, I've already done a versus video with these two, and because this is meant to be a honeycomb mouse like LED Gaming Mouse 2, the LED Gaming Mouse Original is not going to be making many appearances in this video. So let's switch the focus back to these two. Also, if I was going to include the original LED gaming mouse in this video more than I'm already planning to, this is going to be quite a long video because out of all 3 of the golden products, this has the most differences from the original. Inside the box, you receive the mouse itself and the manual. And here we have both of the honeycomb mice. And as you can see, while they are very similar, there's definitely a few differences here. When it comes to the similarities, what we have is, of course, the honeycomb design, as well as a general overall footprint. I don't know if you can really make it out from this angle, but if I just bring the gold mouse front and center, you can see it also has a sleek design with the fins on the side, just like the original. However, if I bring them like so, you can see that the original definitely flares out a bit more than the gold version, and that does make it feel a bit different in the hand. Next up on the top, we do have the scroll wheel, which is nice and clicky, as well as DPI selector buttons that go up and down between multiple settings. And this is where one of the big differences between all 3 of these mice comes into play. In the case of the original LED gaming mouse, the DPI resolutions you can select from are 1200, 1600, 3500, 4800, and 7200. On the LED Gaming Mouse 2, you can select from 400, 800, 1200, and 2400. And finally, on the Gold LED Gaming Mouse, you can select from 1200, 1800, 2400, and 3200. Also, for those of you wondering at home what the heck I mean by DPI, that's just how sensitive your mouse is going to be when you move it. A higher DPI setting means that your mouse cursor will travel further when you move your mouse. Alternatively, a lower DPI setting does mean that your mouse cursor will move slower, giving you more precision when doing certain tasks like sniping, which is one of my favorite gameplay styles. As such, I do appreciate the fact that the LED Gaming Mouse 2 can go down to below 1200 DPI. But at the same time, I have found that the max setting on this isn't quite as sensitive as I would like. So I do appreciate the heightened sensitivity of the sensor in the Gold Edition. Next on our list of similarities, we have the side buttons, which are present on both the LED Gaming Mouse 2 and the Gold Edition LED Gaming Mouse. And technically, these are also available on the original LED Gaming Mouse. And for those of you wondering what the heck these are for, by default, these are going to be forward and back on your web browser, but you can change what they do in any of the games you're playing. And no, rebinding those does not count as using a macro, so you won't get in trouble for it. Well, at least as long as you're not using an external software in order to bind multiple inputs to those buttons so that when you press it, it fires 3 times, or it performs a series of moves, or things like that. If you're just using them as additional buttons, you're fine. Of course, anything goes if you're playing something single player and or not competitive. And while we're on the topic of side buttons, one thing that we have on the LED Gaming Mouse 2, but not on either the Gold LED Gaming Mouse nor the original, is the ability to adjust the LEDs on the mouse itself or even just turn them off. Why has that not become a standard feature in the Bugha line? I absolutely love that. Next up in the differences between these two mice would have to be the cable. Because while they both have a 1.5 meter long cable, the LED Gaming Mouse 2 has a braided fabric coating on the cable, whereas the golden LED Gaming Mouse just has bare plastic. But that is a bit of a trade-off. Where the braided cable is going to be more durable, it's also a heck of a lot more stiff, and that's not always what you want in a mouse. The bare plastic cable is a lot more flexible and gives you better snap movement. But you just better hope you don't close it in a drawer. I speak from experience here. Next on the difference train, we have the overall finish on these mice. And it's not just down to the difference in color. Because the LED Gaming Mouse 2, it has almost a rubberized feel to it, if that makes any sense. In the case of the gold LED Gaming Mouse, just like the keyboard before it, this has been painted gold as far as I can tell. It's not made of gold plastic. And they once again went with that kind of matte finish, so it does have a bit more grip to it. Which, who knows, that might actually help you out a lot if you're doing drag clicking. Personally, I still haven't taken the time to learn the technique, so I'm not even going to try to demonstrate it here. Moving on, in the case of differences, we have the fact that the gold LED Gaming Mouse, unlike any of the non-gold edition Bugha products, actually has his branding on it, as you can see here. And no, despite how it looks here, it's not painted on. It's actually part of the shell, and you'll see it better once I turn the LEDs on. And that's going a bit above and beyond here. At least in the case of the keyboard, they just had to laser engrave a key, and on the case of the headset coming next, they've reproduced his autograph, which is a pretty common thing. Here, they made it part of the frickin' shell. And speaking of the LEDs, another thing that you don't see here on the gold LED Gaming Mouse is the diffuser that is inside the original honeycomb mouse. I'm not saying there's not a diffuser, it's just a very thin one down at the circuit board level. And by switching from the large diffuser, they do shave off quite a few grams from this piece. And that's kind of the whole selling point of mice like this. One more way they shave a lot of weight off of this thing is the fact that if I flip these mice over, the gold edition does not have a metal plate unlike the original. That was kind of a silly move on the case of this one, like I said in my previous video, but I kind of understand it because the manufacturers were probably still going off of the idea that added weight means that people will think that it has added value, not realizing that it was kind of shooting themselves in the foot when it comes to a honeycomb mouse. And to drive home the differences in the weight, let's go ahead and just get this out of the way, bring in my scale, turn it on, and once it's done calibrating, there we go, bring in the LED Gaming Mouse 2, and as you can see, it's around 89 grams. But if I bring in the gold edition, what we have here, if it'll stop moving, is somewhere in the neighborhood of 66 grams. And yeah, that definitely makes a difference when moving the mouse around. People pay a lot of money to have a mouse this light. Next, let's talk about these LEDs, because the differences between the two are not limited to the way the diffusers are done. On the LED Gaming Mouse 2, what happens is you have a nice, gentle transition between colors on the LEDs in different zones. On the flip side, with the gold LED Gaming Mouse, you have that nice transition followed by a kind of jarring strobe. And it gets even worse when the LEDs start drifting further and further apart with their timing. I'm personally not a fan of this style of strobe, but I have seen it done worse. The fact that it's not limited to just red, green, and blue does take a bit of the edge off for me. And as for how these appear in the dark, well, here you go. And like I mentioned previously, with the LED Gaming Mouse 2, you can not only dim the LEDs, but you can turn them off altogether if you so choose. Now the last difference I really need to talk about in this video has to be polling rate, because while both of the previous mice in this line mention it on the box, that's kind of absent here. And there's a reason for that. Let's just go ahead and change up the shot and show you why. Now I'm only going to be doing this test with the 2 honeycomb mice, and let's start things out with the LED gaming mouse 2. In this shot, I have both an external monitor and my mouse hooked up to my laptop, and hopefully you can see that when I move my mouse, the cursor moves on the screen. I have a polling rate tester website up, and if I click start and start moving my mouse around in circles, you can see that this mouse does indeed have a 500 Hz polling rate. However, when I switch to the gold mouse, give it a jiggle so you can make sure that it is indeed the one hooked up to the computer, click start and then start moving that in circles, that's not so much the case. The polling rate on offer here is around 125 Hz, which is the standard for most mice. It's not necessarily a bad thing. And if I'm being perfectly honest here, the 500 Hz on offer with both of these mice is still half the speed of what a lot of higher dollar gaming mice offer, because those come in at around 1000 Hz. This at 125 is closer to your standard office mouse, though admittedly it's still going to be just fine for most gaming. I just thought I'd go ahead and put this information out there, make of it what you will. And there you have the limited edition Bugha Gold LED gaming mouse from Five Below. And in my opinion, this thing is a bit of a mixed bag. I understand the $12 price tag due to the fact that this is meant to be a special edition of the original. But at the same time, there are a couple of downgrades in the fact that you can't control the LEDs and your polling rate is going to be a bit lower than a lot of people like for gaming. On the flip side, they actually did nail the lightweight aspect of this mouse without making a mouse as terrible to use as the Yusei mouse from Five Below that I reviewed ages ago. And once again, I gotta admit, the gold on this isn't that bad, despite the fact that I personally prefer silver and black. At least they went with the matte finish as opposed to the vacuum plating that I mentioned in my previous video. However, with all of that being said, once again, I put this down to the consumer as to whether or not you should buy this one or this one. Though, if I'm being honest, if I had to choose one of the Bugha LED gaming mice, I definitely want the original. I much prefer the way it feels in my hand, and I like the LED effects better. This is a nice runner-up though, with the ability to turn them off. But I think I've said pretty much everything I need to say about these mice, and I do have one more video in this trilogy to get through, so until next time, this is your guy, Cly, signing off.